night, everyone. We are on Mount Carmel. This is the highest peak on Mount Carmel, about 500 meters above sea level. And this is identified, mentioned in the book of Kings, 1 Kings chapter 18, when Prophet Elijah was hiding from Jezebel. Who's Jezebel? The wife of King Ahab. King Ahab was a Jew. Jezebel was not a Jew. She was one of the Baal. And she was killing all the prophets of the Lord. So Prophet Elijah was hiding from Jezebel. Then Prophet Elijah decided to meet the king, King Ahab, and said to him, "Until when do we still live with two opinions? Whether God of Baal is the true God or our Lord is the true God. Let's build two altars, bring two sacrifices, and the true God will answer to our prayer with the fire." So they built two altars, brought two sacrifices, and prophets of Baal, all of them, they started to pray. Nothing happened. Then Prophet Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Maybe your God is sleeping or went for a journey. Pray louder." And they started to pray louder and louder. Nothing happened. Noontime, time for King Elijah came. He asked the people to pour some water on his altar. They did. He started to pray. All of a sudden, fire burned his altar. Prophet Elijah chased the false prophets of Baal to the Kishon River, and massacred all of them. So this is identified. This is the highest peak on Mount Carmel. This is identified where the famous contest took place. The church here was built by the Carmelite order. The Carmelites. Who are the Carmelites? A Catholic order of monks and nuns. They built, their primary saint is Prophet Elijah, and that's why they are called Carmelites. Prophet Elijah was on Mount Carmel. They built two churches on Mount Carmel. One over here, which is called Mufraka, means the burning place, and another one also on Mount Carmel and called Stella Maris. Now, Stella Maris, that's identified where there's a cave inside the church. It is identified where Prophet Elijah was hiding from Jezebel. But this is identified where the famous contest took place, and it is called what? Mufraka, which means the burning place. What about Stella Maris? What does it mean? The other church that was built by Carmelite, the Star of the Sea. So we have two churches on Mount Carmel. Now, how come that Prophet Elijah kills all the prophets of Baal, and their number was 450 prophets? How come he chased them and killed all and massacred all of them? He is the only one. Well, we think that we know that the people who followed the prophets of God, they used to sacrifice their firstborn child. So, Prophet Elijah here proved that El is the true God, that his Lord is the true God and not Baal. So when he proved all the people around Prophet Elijah who followed the false prophets of Baal were very upset at their prophets. Maybe they helped Prophet Elijah. They were very upset to kill all the prophets. Did you get that, everyone? Yes? So, Kishon River is on the eastern side. We cannot see it from here, but it's not too far. It's on the eastern side of the Carmel mountain range. And what do we see from here? Can you see that city straight ahead of us on the mountain? This is Nazareth. That's where we were 1 hour ago. What about the mountain behind it? Mount Tabor. And this one on the right of Mount Tabor. This direction. Great. The teacher. To the right of Mount Moriah, we can see now Mount Gilboa, where Saul fell on his own sword, and where the Philistines defeated the edge of the African Syrian. This is again the Jezreel of Armageddon. Let's go this way.
First time I stood in this spot, I looked around, looked across, and could see Nazareth, and Mount Tabor, and Mount Morah, and Mount Gilboa, and this mountain, and wondered, even though they probably didn't try to throw Jesus off the precipice where we were, at the same time, I wonder if he ever walked up at the end of the day and sat there where he could be by himself, being his Father. So much of history past, what's come true. And he knew that he had a task that had to be fulfilled. And if he's faithful in following God, then he's going to bring victory to himself, to the world. And so as he's sitting on the precipice and look this way and would be reminded of how false gods in the lives of people, how we need help to defeat those gods. And through faith, Elijah standing by himself against, it was even an entire pagan nation, built up an old altar that was here and reminded them of their connection with Yahweh, with God. And then he could look behind him at Mount Tabor and be reminded of another victory there when Deborah and Barak faced off against Sisera and his hordes. And by the faith that Barak had in leading that battle, was able to bring victory during the days of the judges. And then going over one more mountain, being reminded of Gideon, who against all odds, he's facing 120,000 Midianites with 300 men. And yet in faith, he followed after what God had him to do. And as a result of that, there was great victory. And then he can look over one more mountain, and he can be reminded of a king who God had anointed, God had set in place, who had an army behind him, but decided to go after his own way instead of God's way. And he would, at the end of his life, and he was a warrior. They had sung of David and Saul. David had slain his tens of thousands, Saul his thousands, but still he had slain his thousands. And he commits suicide as the battle is lost. And I wonder if Jesus was reminded that he needed to remain faithful if the battle was going to be won. And he could see all around him signs of faithfulness and a reminder of disobedience, and then knowing one day, if he's faithful to the plan the Father had for him, the last battle will be fought right here in this valley. If he failed, we don't know what's going to happen, because the reality is he didn't fail. But we're challenged to look at those places of faith and faithfulness around us. It may be the parents who raised us, or a pastor or someone in a church that taught us about faithfulness and trust and obedience. And they did great things in small places that no one will ever know about. But they taught us to remain faithful to God. So I think it's no mistake that God brought Mary and Joseph out of Nazareth and then brought them back here, where Jesus would spend a lot of time learning. And you know his mom and dad taught him about these places, because they want him to understand who he is as a Jewish person, as an Israelite, but also understand that he had a mission that God had sent him on, because he was God's son. And he was going to need to remain faithful. And finally in the Garden of Gethsemane, when after 3 times Jesus prays and then says, Father, not my will, but yours be done. I heard a preacher say once that indeed our salvation was bought on the cross. Our victory over death came from an empty grave. But our eternity was determined when Jesus said, not my will, but yours be done. And he left the Garden of Gethsemane, a prisoner, knowing he was going to die, and never once tried to get out of what happened. He never answered them when they asked him questions, because he wasn't trying to find a way out. He was making his way to the cross. So let's remember the things of faithfulness that God puts around us to remind us of our need to remain faithful to him, because what we do will change the lives of people. If we're not faithful, we will never know what changes could have come.
Right, let's go downstairs, visit the church 2-3 minutes, and go back to the house.